Calling RB42 to the floor. Committee action is for disapproval. Do we have any comment?
I'm Macy Miller, representing myself. I'd like to call comment 1.
Testimony in support of comment 1.
I have lived in Idaho with my family in our movable tiny home for the past 14 years, and I'm the lead proponent of this comment. In 2016, when Appendix Q was approved, it changed lives, including mine. I'm excited today that we get the opportunity to address tiny houses which are built on wheels. I have 3 points to share for your consideration. First, while this comment may look different from the original proposal, the goal remains the same. Having worked within the ICC 1215 standard development, I view this as a more direct path forward. It does not compete with that work, it complements it, offering immediate performance-based progress this code cycle by adding clear language to the existing tiny house appendix. That keeps it voluntary, adaptable, and easy for jurisdictions to adopt now, while the standard could advance at the pace its complexity requires. This is incremental progress that the movable tiny house community needs, and it's overdue. Second, there's already standards for RVs, modular, and manufactured housing. They're all manufacturer-driven models, but this movement's always been about people, not products. Movable tiny houses emerged outside of those pathways for reasons. They're designed and built for or by the people who live in them. That's key to keeping this housing type attainable. Third, movable tiny houses are occupant-driven solutions to affordability. They are not developer-driven. Recognizing them in the IRC would provide an urgently needed path to resolve zoning barriers, allowing existing property owners to host them as ADUs without the large cost barrier of new construction. This offsets existing mortgages, it adds density, it strengthens local resilience, all while providing affordable housing where it's needed most. The IRC already ensures tiny houses can be built safely. The movable aspect is how this housing keeps pace with modern needs. I ask for your support to make space and code for the people who've already proven what's practical. Thank you.
Further testimony in support of the comment.
Martin Hammer, architect, representing myself. In 2016, I co-authored with tiny house advocate Andrew Morrison the original public comment that for what became Appendix Q. Andrew supports this comment as a named proponent. I'm also one of 3 primary authors of this comment. Appendix Q, now Appendix AB or BB, created a legal pathway in the IRC for tiny houses built on foundations, importantly including habitable lofts and their access and egress. So the Appendix Q definitely was a landmark step forward for tiny houses and is now adopted in over half the US states. But for procedural reasons, the original public comment could not include a very common type of tiny house, the movable tiny house, also known as tiny houses on or tiny house on wheels. And the demand for them and the flexibility that they provide has only increased over the last 9 years, and this comment seeks to fill that void. So to be clear, this comment allows a movable tiny house as a dwelling only when it is anchored to the ground on a foundation and with the required utility connections. However, it can be disconnected and moved via its transportation system to another location, and it must always be permitted and comply with the planning and building codes for its location of installation. Now the components as governed by Appendix BB and the newly proposed section are as follows. An engineered chassis with an IRC compliant tiny house above it, an engineered IRC foundation or ground anchorage below it, and engineer connections to both. The chassis must meet performance requirements for vehicles. So we support the prescriptive designs for the currently proposed engineered components, but until this time, this comment provides engineered path for
Question.
both.
Question. Martin back here. Are we to suppose or understand that this is a full gut and replace? The original proposal and the reference standard are out, and this whole new thing comes in? And because it says replace as follows.
Yes. In the comment, it uses the word replace, and that's what it is.
Okay.
Because the standard is not still ready. Thank you.
Further testimony in support of the comment.
Yeah, Anthony Dente, representing Verdant Structural Engineers. I'm a licensed engineer in many states across the country. I'm the CEO of Verdant Structural Engineers and Verdant Building Products for 18 years. I've conducted structural design on residential and commercial buildings, often in high seismic zones. The structural provisions of BB 107 comprehensively cover new structural loading systems and connection topics. That the fact that these static houses have a metal frame, a chassis in between them and the foundation might bring about. The section does this succinctly by requiring an engineered design for every link in the chain, as Martin Hammer just shared. There are no unaddressed structural subjects related to this new subsection, and we have consulted with structural engineer Kelly Cobean on these issues in the development of this subsection. My office has assisted clients with the engineering of alternative or non-codified structural elements, and in my experience, when there's no clear, accessible path to a building permit and clients choose to build without a building permit, there can be structural safety issues that relate far beyond just the connection to a chassis from the roof to the foundation, and this would offer folks designing and building movable tiny homes a path to work with their building department and get those anchored to their foundation in a static way on their site. So I urge adoption. Thank you for your time.
Quick question.
Another question.
Yeah,
With this replacement, is this standard no longer being proposed?
correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Reminder, testimony is that we are trying to change the committee's mind about the previous action they took.
Good
Go ahead.
afternoon. My name is Jewel Pearson, and I represent myself. I live in North Carolina in my self-designed and built movable tiny house and have for more than a decade. I'm here in support of this comment, not only because my movable tiny home changed my life, but because I've spent nearly a decade working to ensure this movement and this conversation includes the Black community, a community too often left out of housing opportunity and security. Movable tiny houses offer one of the quickest, most affordable home ownership paths. For Black communities, this represents a real opportunity for wealth building and security, as year after year, only about 44% of Black households ever achieve home ownership, compared to 72% of white households, a continually widening gap. They also removed one of the biggest home ownership barriers, land cost. People can build and own without that additional financial burden, offering the affordability and the flexibility to rent or relocate. Personally, after experiencing a stroke in 2023, owning my home has literally been life-saving, offering security and the freedom to recover and heal on my own terms. My home is my non-traditional retirement plan, as nearly half of Americans over 55 have no retirement savings. On the East Coast, stronger hurricanes and flooding continue to displace families with increasing frequency. Movable tiny houses provide the flexibility to protect housing security, relocate safely, and rebuild community. Those small movable tiny homes offer powerful solutions if recognized and regulated safely. I respectfully ask for your support of this comment, which establishes clear guidance for construction and safety, ensuring these houses serve dwellers and communities, and that people too often left out of traditional housing are part of what comes
Thank you.
next.
Further testimony in support of the comment.
My name is Vina Lustado, founder of Soul House Design. I was a previous voting member of ICC 1215 standard, and I strongly support this comment. I designed and built my tiny house in 2013. It was one of the most rewarding and enriching experiences of my life. Sadly, since 2020, I have not been able to live in my tiny house after receiving a non-compliance notice. Even prior to that, I lived with this anxiety. Still, the benefits outweighed the risk. Most of us want to follow the law and live safely. This pathway to legality is essential. It's about dignity, safety, and stability. As a Filipino immigrant from a large family, we didn't have much money. I never dreamed I would be able to own my own home and later save enough money to buy property in California, where skyrocketing real estate prices have driven many to homelessness. With my work, I've been privileged to help others make meaningful changes towards financial freedom. Many have been able to provide independent living to elderly parents, offer caretaking, and house family members in need while living on the same property. There are so many practical uses of movable tiny houses. Keeping a tiny house on wheels is essential. It's offering flexibility when life circumstances change. It also provides mobility in response to the threat of wildfires across California and other states. Movable tiny houses sit at the intersection of building code, transportation code, yet they are not manufactured housing. HUD has clarified that movable tiny houses are not under their purview, and RV rules fail to address full-time occupancy and fire life safety. This comment closes that gap, providing clear, desperately needed code for safe, legitimate,
you.
full-time dwelling. Thank you.
Thank you. Further testimony in support of the comment?
Hi, my name is Hazel. I'm 11 years old. I love my tiny home because I've gotten to explore new neighborhoods while staying in the same house. When I need to get my own house, I worry it will be too big and too expensive. I hope we will approve this so more kids like me can grow up in movable tiny houses now and into their future.
Thank you. Further testimony in support of the comment?
Hi, my name is Miles. I just turned 10. I like living in our tiny house because it's big enough, I'm comfortable, but small enough to be close to my family. I think movable tiny homes should get legal rules because there are big houses and normal houses, yet tiny homes like mine have no rules. Please help make movable tiny homes legal so other kids can have a home like mine.
Further testimony in support of the comment?
Over here. Good afternoon. My name is James Herndon. I'm an architect from Idaho. I'm here representing myself as well as sharing the voices of other supporters who couldn't be here today. To start, we have more than 11,000 signatures from the public who have voiced their support for movable tiny houses in the IRC. 7,000 are from our 2016 effort, and over 4,000 are specifically for this comment. A co-proponent who couldn't be here, Rich Crowley from Boston, is a recently retired member of the Massachusetts Board of Building Regulations and Standards, and he states that movable tiny houses are a very natural housing evolution that addresses a chronic affordable housing shortage. This comment is a necessary step toward clarity. Another co-proponent who couldn't be here, Alan Plummer, a building official in Maine, notes, the role of a code officer is not to resist new housing models, but to ensure they're built safely. Having a national code to reference will help ensure that movable tiny houses can pass inspection where they're installed. From my hometown, Boise, Idaho, we have a letter from the mayor's office signed by their city building official, Jason Blyce, in support of movable tiny houses. Boise passed an ordinance this summer to allow movable tiny houses, but they have found that they have limited tools to accept them safely. Their letter affirms that recognizing movable tiny houses expands housing options and reflects current needs and realities in their community. From Massachusetts, Representative David DeCoste urges the ICC to approve codes for chassis and ground attachments to make these dwellings viable. Another letter from Senator Bruce Tarr supports classifying movable tiny houses as legitimate dwellings in the ADU, or as ADUs, in order to expand housing choices. So there you go, from Boston to Boise, from code officials to state leaders to everyday citizens, the message is consistent. Movable tiny houses are here, and we're all looking to the IRC to provide clarity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further testimony and support?
Thank you very much. Kelly Coben, structural engineer, speaking for myself. I'm up here because I have started participating in the Tiny Home ICC standard effort as an interested party. I wanted to let you know it isn't a question of one or the other. There's really hard work going on in that committee. But looking at where that was in the process, Barton and Anthony thought it would be a really good idea to bring some of this very specific language about the homes built on the chassis into the IRC. And so I have been helping them review it. I believe that you have a good, strong statement of what is required in here, and it's important to put it out there so that people do think about and understand that there is a need for proper consideration of connection to the chassis, installation, anchorage, and so forth to make these safe. Encourage you to move forward with comment 1. Thank you.
A good question.
Question.
Kelly, over here. You brought up attachment to the chassis. How does that differ if I'm going to move my house to a Hurricane Pro region versus Boise?
So I will answer from my understanding and a little bit of the background and discussion that I have, and encourage maybe there might be other people that want to jump in on that. But right now, what you are doing is you're designing it for the wind and seismic loads that are in the code, and you're designing it with the intent that in its installed location, like any other home that's going through this process, it has met all of the code requirements to have the intended performance in that location. My understanding is that this is not specifically dealing with the fact that there might be transportation requirements that are beyond the building officials' jurisdiction and that are controlled by other agencies.
Okay, thank you. My question was answered.
Further testimony and support.
David Bonowitz speaking for myself. As I have on other proposals, I generally support the idea of expanding the scope of the IRC and being more flexible and open to these new kinds of housing types because they do serve the community. Other than that, Kelly basically answered my question about what is the relationship between this new appendix and the standard that is still coming. And what I understand, what I accept, and I think is a good answer, is that there's no conflict between them, and that having this in the IRC as proposed here is a good idea.
Further testimony and support. Testimony in opposition.
Marcelo Hirscher, GBH International. I was a firm supporter of Appendix Q when it came out. We absolutely need to be able to allow these tiny houses, although in fact a lot of them nowadays are more expensive than standard houses, but anyway, we want to allow this. But this is not a tiny house. This is an RV. The IRC is not the appropriate location to regulate vehicles. Tiny houses on wheels are vehicles, recreational vehicles. If you look at proposed section BB 107.3, it states that these tiny houses on wheels must meet the requirements for vehicles of the NST and National Transportation Safety Board. If we look at NFPA has 1192 for RVs and 1194 for how you put RVs on ground. This is not a place for the residential code. This is a vehicle. Thank you.
Further testimony in opposition to the comment.
Shane Nelson with the American Wood Council. So there was a question about whether or not the standard was referenced or it's not referenced in here, and the standard is also not complete. And we don't think that necessarily, we're not going to get into the merits of the language that's in there. It's so much holistically from the standpoint of there is a standard that's being developed, and there's a lot of people involved in developing that standard. And I think it's going to be way more appropriate to let that go through, that process play out before putting something in that same regards into the IRC where you're going to potentially have conflicts. I hear all the support, and I actually think that that's something that they don't want. They don't want to necessarily have something where the standard is going to address situations, it's going to provide some prescriptive options that maybe aren't necessarily in the IRC. It's going to maybe make that whole process simpler, and then you're going to be pigeonholed on what's into the appendix and run into conflicts on whether or not jurisdiction is going to adopt the appendix or adopt the standard. So I would just much rather see this kind of just wait, let the standard be developed, and then probably in the future, the whole regarding moving would be better just reference that standard. So please just no action. Thanks.
Further testimony in opposition to the comment.
My name is Ali Fatam with the City of San Diego, and we actually adopted movable tiny home regulations, but we did not adopt them as building standards. We adopt them in the zoning code because they're equivalent. We consider them to be equivalent accessory dwelling units. But we are regulating them like a recreational vehicle. They have a decal on them. They're typically fabricated off-site in a different location where we can perform inspections. So I think I would also suggest no action so that the requirements would be more complete. This does not affect us because it's in the appendix chapter, but like I said, I wanted to just point out that we do have regulations that address movable tiny houses, and we're regulating them like an RV. Thank you.
Further testimony in opposition.
Dakota Wharton, City of Grove City, speaking on behalf of myself. I like where the proponents are going with this, but I have concern about the burden that they're going to pass back to building officials. In B107.3, where they talk about us looking at performance data, that's acceptable to us. We don't have any guidance. That's a lot of liability for a jurisdiction or a building official to take. So I'd urge no action and them to come back with some direction. Thank you.
Further testimony in opposition. Rebuttal in support, and probably want to state what you're rebutting for clarity for all involved.
Thank you very much. Kelly Cobain, structural engineer, speaking for myself. I'd like to speak to what Marcella Herscher said. I would like to point out that we have an appendix chapter for manufactured homes that are very similar in that they are built and then transported to a site and then installed, and some of the installation and anchorage details are pointing to that. So we have a parallel that is already in the code, approved and functioning, and this should be very much the same. Thank you.
Further rebuttal in support.
Regarding the issue of waiting for the in-process 1215 standard, first to clarify, because there was a question earlier about this.
No, we need rebuttal.
Well, okay. So that standard is in process. It actually could be brought in the public comment if it's ready. But waiting for that, that standard and what we in this comment are not in conflict. They are potentially mutually compatible. I spoke with one of the lead people this morning about this issue, and he told me he's in support of our comment. This is an important stepping stone that we're doing because that standard is not ready. And so it does close that gap in the meantime until it is. And we don't want to wait another 9 years. It should have been here 6 or 9 years ago.
Further rebuttal in support.
Macy Miller, representing myself again. They covered a couple of the issues I wanted to cover, but I want to reinforce that RVs are regulated by RVIA codes, which distinctly do not consider life safety. By definition, they're temporary dwellings. They're not dwellings. They're temporary structures. This is where tiny homes belong because these are full-time dwellings that people live in. I don't think we can afford to kick this can 3 more years down the code cycle. I've lived in a tiny house for 14 years. There are others out there doing the same, living under the radar. People will build these. We need to find safe ways for them to do it. They solve far too many problems than they create, but people want to meet codes. Thank you.
Further rebuttal in support.
Thank you. I wanted to clarify again that RVs rest on their wheels. This section explicitly mandates the standard foundation, residential foundation, and connection to that foundation, abiding by the rules and loading of that site. In rebuttal to the suggestion that the building official doesn't have any guidelines in which to assess, it's an engineered design is required in this case, and as I understand it, that is a rule of the licensed engineer professionals in our field that they will demonstrate why compliance, the design meets a compliance standard and is appropriate for that fact. And we are working closely with the leading members of the standard development committee, and so I would see no reason why when the standard is in place and ready to swap out language of the appendix that would happen, that we would make the code smaller at that point and simply reference the standard. We're in close contact with them. That seems like something everyone would be looking for. Thanks.
Further rebuttal and support. Rebuttal and opposition.
Dakota Wharton, City of Grove City, speaking on behalf of myself. As a code official, whenever we're making a judgment, it has to have foundation in code, and that's absent here. I think the proposal is a little premature, so I urge no action and them to come back in PCH. Thank you.
Further rebuttal and opposition.
Hi, Scott Anderson, City of Minneapolis, speaking on behalf of myself. Made a comment that we already have this in the building code for these manufactured homes. The big difference, though, is that those rely on a certification. Those buildings are inspected, and there's a nameplate attached to it. So when that building is moved from one location to another, we have some way of verifying that it's meant to code. This new one, no building official is going to attach a nameplate to this building so that it can be moved from Idaho to Wisconsin. Not going to happen. Thanks.
Further rebuttal and opposition. Seeing none. Mr. Chairman, RB42 is yours.
Committee, RB42, Kurt.
I have a question for staff. Is this replaces all the entire first CAH1, or is it only from BB down that's being replaced, which leaves the R301?
It says replace.
So everything, even the R section goes?
Yeah.
Okay.
It is a complete replacement of the original proposal.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a motion? Oh, Tom.
I make a motion that it be modified as comment 1, I believe is.
So you're saying approved is modified by comment number 1?
Correct, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, and we have a second. Go ahead, we need a reason.
The reason is, as stated before, these things are being built now, and they are being built by individuals, not by companies that can pay for a certification process as a manufactured home. And therefore, they need to be regulated. Without it, they are could be built dangerously, traveling down the road dangerously. As I understand it, the connections for the house to the chassis will be done by a structural engineer. His name will be on it, not the building officials. And therefore, I feel confident that this modification satisfies the health, safety, and welfare of the public.
Okay, thank you very much. Greg.
As we evolve, we need tiny homes. I think we're being over-scrutinized. I respect the professional opinions, but I feel that we have to start somewhere, and as been said, we need to start with regulating it somehow. It's going to happen. I've been hearing this for 6 years in our area. As one who raised 2 children and lived on a boat for 10 years, why are we discriminating against this? We can pick this apart till the next session, and I feel we need to do something about that. It's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. John.
I'm going to vote against the approval as modified. And even though I went through it, and I think a lot of this is on the right pathway, and I commend everybody who stood up, especially the kids. This is a 100% completely different motion or proposal than RB42. It doesn't remotely, it's not that things have been picked apart and moved around. This is completely new, and that's not what the purpose of CAH2 is. Personally, I don't believe it should be back at public comment hearing, because this is something for the next code cycle. I'm sorry to say it that way, but unfortunately, this is brand new and not the purpose for CAH2.
Okay, thank you very much. And a Me Too wave, a couple of Me Too waves. Anybody else? Oh, Ann.
Yes, I was ready to kind of pick it apart, but it is something that's needed, and there's a lot of holes in the chassis design. As a structural engineer, I don't have guidance in exactly how that is done, but the fact that you say that engineered design is required does take the onus off of the building department. I think there's work to make us engineers figure out how to do that design in this, but I do agree that it is needed.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Seeing no further comments, committee, we have in front of us a motion of approval as modified by comment number 1 of RB 42. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. All opposed, same sign. Thank you. That motion fails. We need a new motion.
No further action.
No further action? Do we have any other motions? Me too? Okay. Okay, Mr. Moderator, seeing no further motions on RB 42, the committee recommends no further action at this time.
Thank you. Calling